Hey, everybody, this is Craig from NGP Van. I am excited for this webinar today on digital fundraising and best practices. I am joined by the team at Middle Seat, who will introduce themselves in just a moment. We have maybe about a minute or so before we get started. Oh, less than a minute. Okay, cool. So we are just waiting for people to jump on. The participant list is jumping up. So we'll give it a minute while some additional people jump on. We had several hundred people register for this, which is great. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we do introductions. I'm Craig. We also have another person, Donna, on, who has her camera turned off. She's a little shy today, but she will be keeping track of the recording of this. So usually the first question people ask is the webinar being recorded? It is. When the webinar is done, we like to transcribe the webinar, add closed captions, things like that. And we will get a copy of the video over to everyone who has attended or registered for this. So we will have a recording. Middle Seat will, I believe, make a copy of the deck available as well. So we'll get that over to you in an email when that's done. And we have a couple different features here. So we have chat. So if you're joining us now, please drop in the chat who you are, where you're from, what city you're in, maybe what organization or campaign you're with, just so we can all say hi and see where everyone's from. It's always cool to follow that in the chat. Also, you will see a Q&A on the bottom of the Zoom panel. If you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A area, because all of us will be jumping in and out of the Q&A to answer questions. So as one person is chatting and driving the slides, we will, the other people will jump in and answer questions. The way we do these is at the end of the webinar, if we have questions for whatever reason, time, or we just don't have the answer, we will put that into an email and send that as a follow-up to you. And if there's one that really stumps this crowd, which is not likely to happen, but if there's one that does stump the crowd, it may take a few more days for us to get back to you, but we'll let you know if that happens. And then finally, usually that takes about a day or so to get the video, the closed captions added to the video and then posted up and sent out as an email. And then we may have one or two polls here that we add toward the end, but that's pretty much it. If you have questions, drop it in the Q&A. It looks like we have a couple questions already, and we'll just move along. So we have a great webinar, obviously one that is very important to campaigns across the country, digital fundraising. We're going to go over best practices. Before I let them introduce themselves, I just want to say this is a super exciting webinar. Middle Seat is one of the best campaign firms out there, in my opinion. They just do a lot of testing, a lot of measuring. They are amazing storytellers, and they're just really, really good at their jobs. I'm not going to go through the long list of, huge campaigns they've worked with, or literally hundreds of millions of dollars they have helped to fundraise on behalf of campaigns. I will let them do that. But I'm really excited that they're joining us. So I will turn it over to Kenneth, who's one of the partners of Middle Seat, and he can introduce the team and go from there.
Excellent. Well, we're really excited to join you. I'll do a brief introduction and then I'll pass it off to Becca and Kelsey to introduce themselves. I'm Kenneth. I'm one of the partners here at Middle Seat. I focus on fundraising and media strategy. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm based here in Washington, D.C. Excited to talk to you all today. I'll pass it over to Becca.
Hey everyone, I'm Becca. Pronouns are she, her. I'm a managing digital strategist at Middle Seat, and I manage a team of some of our fantastic emailers raising money for our clients. And I'm also based in DC, and I can pass it over to Kelsey.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelsey Labatkin. I use she, her pronouns. I am a principal of advertising at Middle Seat and really excited to be talking with everybody today. I'm based in New York as well, so if anyone is here, let's connect.
Excellent. All right. So, and can everyone see the screen? Craig, could you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about kind of three of the most important elements of online fundraising. We don't have enough time to cover every little thing, so we're gonna focus on the big ones right up front. And so we'll start with some email fundraising expertise shared by Becca. Then we'll walk into list building and direct donate expertise shared by Kelsey. And we're gonna actually start by, before we get into those at a high level, and talk kind of fundraising 101 about the levers that you can pull as a digital fundraiser. And so generally speaking, good fundraising comes down to a handful of levers that can be pulled. And so one is that quality of your ask. Two is the number of times you ask people for money. Three is how easy is it to make a donation. And four is how many people are you asking to make a donation, right? And so it could be anything from, can we improve our ask for money? Is our ask relevant to people? Are the stakes high enough for someone want to pull out their wallet and donate? Are we asking the reader to do something that can create the change that they want to see in the world? Whether that's getting someone elected or getting a bill passed through Congress. Those are levers you can pull in terms of improving the ask in your email or ads fundraising. Second is, how often are we asking? If you only send people an email once per year, you're going to get less money than if you ask 20 times per year. And the same goes for ads. The more you can put out there into the world, the more money you will get back. Third is, how easy is it to donate? Is your donation page simple and easy to use? Or do people land on the donation page and it looks like it'll take too long, so they leave and don't fill it out? And number four, last but not least, is how many people are we asking for money? If you ask 100,000 people for money, you're going to get more money than if you ask 10,000 people for money. So building the size of the audience you're talking to is very crucial. And I will pass it to Becca for the next slide.
Yeah, so let's talk about email fundraising. So why do we use email as a fundraising vehicle? Well, number one, email is still the number one way to raise money online from small dollar donors. You can see in this pie chart here that we kind of collected some data from middle seat clients since 2016. So you'll see that email and ads has actually raised more money than social media, merch store, and a lot of these other buckets combined. Texting is also included in here. That's a newer avenue that we're starting to see take off and having some success with, but email continues to be like the core of where we're getting our fundraising volume. Secondly, people will accept you flooding their inboxes. I know that a lot of us receive a lot of campaign email and we think, oh gosh, there's so much coming at me at once. But in comparison to something like texting, there's only so much you can text a person before they're going to not be able to tolerate it. But we've seen time and time again that people will accept quite a few emails from campaigns in their inbox. It's really a growing, not shrinking field. Every cycle, we see that email fundraising continues to go up and up as small dollar fundraising increases in importance. Another reason is that by emailing, you're reaching all of your supporters in one place. You can think of building an email list kind of like standing in front of a crowd of your supporters with a megaphone, and they're all gathered in one place ready to hear their marching orders, and their marching orders is to donate. You get access to everyone every time you send an email. Whereas if you were to say post on Facebook, only about 2% of your page likers might see your post, but when you email, you're really reaching everyone in your audience and can get up to 20% or so people who will open that email and respond. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the email calendar. So the reason, one of the biggest reasons we see the failure of email programs is a lack of frequency. You really want to make sure that you have a steady and strong cadence. Making sure that you're actually, when you ask people to donate, they will donate, but you have to make sure you're asking. So you want to make sure you're sending emails. Also, your email calendar can work hand in hand with your projections. So say you have projections for the month or the quarter. Having an email calendar is a really great way of planning out how you're going to hit those projections. And then also having a good spread of emails can prevent that list fatigue that we can sometimes be worried about. The number one thing is you do want to have a steady cadence because you want to make sure that you're keeping people in the loop and that you're continuously asking folks to donate, because if you don't ask, they can't donate.
And we wanted to talk about how often you should email, because this is a question we get all the time. And Richard just asked a great question about deliverability and how that might limit the access to people's inboxes, and how often you email will have a big impact on your deliverability. So the first thing I want to say is that email frequency is a secondary concern to email content. And what I mean by that is if your content is good, if the content you're sending to people, provides value to them, or is compelling or newsworthy, or if you are responding to things that people care about, all those things that make an email great. If you're doing all those things, then you can email it out regardless of the frequency. We've done some testing internally at Middle Seat, and the sky is the limit for email frequency in terms of the ROI. You don't actually start to see diminishing returns from emailing people until you email people like 5 times a day. And so you're likely to actually be limited more by the amount of good content you can create than you are by the tolerance that people will have for multiple emails per day. And so what I like to say is, as long as you're writing high quality emails that people want to read and want to engage with and that are compelling, you don't need to worry about sending too much email. Now, the second part of that is sending too little email. And Becca mentioned that sending too little email is a common failure point for a lot of programs. And so one thing I like to tell people is not to worry as much about unsubscribes as they are worried about unsubscribes. First, if you think about unsubscribes, these are individuals who are, who don't want to be on your email program, who aren't likely to engage or donate in the first place. And instead of thinking about, oh, how many people I'm losing to unsubscribes every time I send an email, one thing that people don't think about that is actually the primary cause for your list size decreasing is inactivity. And so we had an awesome question in the Q&A from Richard about deliverability issues. You only want to email people who've shown you signs of life, who are active or new to your list. Either they've been opening recently, they've been clicking recently, they've taken action or donated recently, or they're brand new to your email list. You don't want to email people who have no signs of life, who haven't been opening or clicking or donating or taking action for a very long period of time. And the biggest threat to that active list size going down is not unsubscribes, it is actually inactivity. When you email more often, you give the people on your list more chances to open, to click, to donate, to take action, and to tell you, hey, I'm alive, I'm here, I want to consume your content. I put a graph here that is from the Fetterman campaign last cycle. And this is a graph of emails sent in blue per month and the amount of money we raised per month. And you can see there's a pretty solid loose correlation there between email sent and the amount of money raised. And even though we jacked the email send number way up later in the cycle, the email raised number did not go down. It didn't get threatened or anything like that. It actually went up. And the reason for that is that at the end of the cycle, content is highly relevant to people and people are really excited to read it. And so you can afford to send more emails. So again, focus on the content and make sure you're sending enough email and don't worry about sending too much email. You're more likely to be limited by the amount of content you can possibly write and get out the door. So wanted to talk about what a good email looks like. And Becca's going to speak more about this as well. This is another example from the Fetterman campaign. One, you want to start with an opening that hooks the reader. So in this case, it's, hey, I'm reaching out about something really important, right? We put a little siren emoji in there. So that's going to be a good hook. 2 is we're presenting the problem. And in this email, the problem is that We have a deadline to wire money to keep TV ads on the air before November 8th, and we need a certain amount of money to do that. If we don't have that money, it looks like we might have to cancel our television ads. Then you offer a solution to the problem that involves the reader making a donation. So we say, hey, Kenneth, can you chip in to fund our ad fund? And notice that we ask the reader to make a donation with a specific amount. We'll follow up on that shortly. But this is the basic architecture of a good email, and we wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, so continuing on what Kenneth was saying, having a good email, the number one thing you want is to have a strong theory of change. So how does the reader making a donation solve the problem that you're presenting? The Fetterman email was a really great example of that. Another one that is top of mind for me is environmental justice. One of the clients I'm working on is very focused on that. And so like thinking about like, okay, what is the problem that you're presenting? Say it's fossil fuels and trying to get to green energy or trying to move towards green energy. How does the reader participating and taking action right now help your organization, your candidate, or your platform get towards that end goal? Another thing is being skimmable. Folks' attention spans just aren't what they used to be anymore. I think it's just the digital age. People don't spend a lot of time reading emails or reading in general, maybe. So making sure that your emails are skimmable and that there is an ask right up front can be very helpful in getting those conversions. The third thing is having that hard ask. Like I said, if you ask for money, people will donate. If you don't ask, then people don't have that call to action. So you have to make sure that you're having a solid ask in your emails, and then mentioning how much you need. We've actually tested this, and in comparison to just asking for a donation or asking for a specific amount, you might have seen some campaign emails in your inboxes asking for like $3, $5, $27. Having that specific amount will actually help grow the volume of fundraising you're able to get from your emails.
Couple more elements of a good email that we'll discuss here. One is this idea of the we mindset. And this is something I learned early on in my career doing email from a campaign fundraiser that was really influential to me. This is the idea of using an inclusive frame to bring the reader into our movement and let them know that without them, we're not going to be successful in our theory of change. We'll talk more about that in a second to clarify kind of what that looks like. Second on this list here, don't overload the ask. A lot of people who are new to email fundraising or new to email engagement in general tend to ask people to do too many things at once, which leads to kind of an overwhelming feeling that's like, hey, I'm not going to do anything because you asked me to do so many things. And last but not least is be timely. Email about the news of the day, meet the moment. Be with the times, be relevant. That's going to allow people to be more interested in actually reading your content, which is going to lead to more longevity of them staying on the list and also lead to better results.
Great. So building a theory of change, as we mentioned, it's probably the most important piece when it comes to drafting your emails. So when you're thinking about your theory of change, when you're thinking about the structure of your email, you really want to be answering the question, why is it important for someone to respond to this particular moment to this email with a donation? And the best way to do that is to answer the question, why are you sending it? So when you're drafting your email, the few questions you want to ask yourself is, number one, what is the change we want to see? So again, going back to that environmental justice example, the change is moving away from fossil fuels and moving towards green energy. What can we do to achieve that change? What is your candidate, your organization doing in that space to help move towards green energy? Why should we do it? Why is it so important that we focus on this now and solve this problem now? And also, what how that person's donation is going to help your organization get to that end goal. Having that sense of urgency is really important because that's going to propel people to feel motivated that this moment right now is when I should be donating. I did want to answer one of the questions I saw. I think it was David's question about approaching other organizations about sending an email to their list. I would make sure that the organization you're reaching out to is relevant to the work that you're doing. That'll help make sure that they're more likely to engage. But I think just having a contact, if you have a contact at the organization, you can go ahead and reach out. I think a lot of organizations are used to doing split sends now, and might also be open to doing it if you're open to sending to your list from their organization. We've done that a lot for our clients, but if you have a contact, I would go ahead and reach out via email.
Great point. I'm going to talk a little bit about another model email that really addresses the theory of change that we're talking about. And this is a great example that Michael Whitney, who is one of my old colleagues, showed me a long time ago. Whoops, I skipped forward here. This is one of the best fundraising emails, according to the Obama team, that they sent in the 2008 campaign. Now, for those of you who are a little older and remember that campaign, Obama had a huge spark in Iowa, giving a really rousing speech at what's known as in the past as the JJ dinner. And this was the email they sent out, or excerpts of the email they sent out right after. So it says, Barack sparked new momentum on the ground in Iowa. They established the urgency by saying, we need to react quickly to build on this moment. So when you think about the theory of change of why should we take action right now, that urgency is being established right there. Now they established what's the problem that we need to solve together. Well, the problem is that Barack Obama is scheduled to travel the country for major donor fundraisers over the next couple of weeks, and so they've established hey, he's not going to be able to keep campaigning in Iowa. That's the problem. Now the solution is if we can raise $850,000 over and I love how old school this is, the capitalized internet. If we can raise $850,000 over the internet this week, President Obama, or then candidate Obama, can come back to Iowa and spend more time there instead of in New York and LA and Chicago talking to rich donors. And finally, that ask at the bottom. Now, I think that ask could be improved by being more specific and by being a harder ask. But otherwise, is a great email. It really demonstrates a strong theory of change. And I'm not surprised that this was one of their better performers over the course of their campaign.
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, making sure your emails are skimmable is also really important. People's attention spans just aren't what they used to be. But you might have noticed that for some of the emails that you receive in your own inbox, you'll see that the ask is actually pretty high up. And that's something we consider a best practice as well, because Litmus, which is kind of like a data email giant in the space, found that the average email is only read for about 11.1 seconds, which is a really short amount of time. So having that ask up there might ensure that people who are already primed to donate, say they've been reading a few of your other fundraising emails, haven't given yet, but those have primed them to donate. The next email that they receive, if they see that ask up front, they might go ahead and convert. So you also want to make sure you're doing that, but you also want to make sure that your emails are skimmable enough. That means some folks try to do a lot of bolding of the most important parts of the email, of wanting to capture that is the essence of what they're asking or what they're talking about, that leads up to the next ask. So that's another way of doing that as well.
So let's talk about what a strong ask is. And actually, this is, if you remember what the ask was in the Obama email, it's more reminiscent of the ask on the left side. So one of these asks on the left is from the former governor of Hawaii. This is an excerpt from an actual fundraising email, long email about all the great things that the governor's doing. And that first line is linked. It says, Governor Egan's always led with the belief that it is his responsibility to do the right thing for the right reasons. Now, you will get some people who click through on that and donate, But you're going to get a lot more money if you follow the example of the right box, which is a very direct, strong ask. Can you chip in $3 to help us make the most of our new ad campaign? We need to reach as many voters as possible in the final 6 weeks. If you don't actually ask people for money, you will get lower results. And a lot of people, when they start getting into online fundraising, they don't make a hard ask because they're shy, they're embarrassed, they feel like it's icky to be asking people for their money. And because you don't ask, people don't give, right? So making a strong ask, essential component of a good email program. And to speak about why we ask for a specific amount, this is a test that, again, my old colleague Michael ran with The Intercept, which has its own email program that I believe is run on Action Kit. And so in that program, they tested out the same exact email, but they asked in the hyperlink line, can you contribute to The Intercept? Versus can you contribute $15 to The Intercept? And they tested it with the same audience size, and they raised 9% more money just by putting the phrase $15 in there. So when you ask people for a specific amount of money, it tells them like, hey, they know exactly how much they need from me, and it kind of takes the guesswork out there, and you get a higher amount of money. So what we recommend is, if they're a person who's never donated before, ask them for a really small amount of money. If they're a person who has donated before, ask them for the highest previous contribution that they have donated in the past, right? So if they donated before and they donated $50, ask them for another $50 because we know they're capable of it. If they've never donated, lower the bar a lot to $3, $5, $10, $15, right? So let's talk about what the we mindset is. And I am going to pick on the campaign where I got my start in digital fundraising, which is Bernie versus Hillary. And I'm going to use this campaign as an example because Hillary was the winning candidate of that campaign, of course, and had a really big email list and raised a lot of money online, but raised significantly less money online than Bernie Sanders did. And I want to highlight one of the reasons I think that Hillary Clinton raised less money online. And I think it is this we mindset. So this is actually the email that Hillary sent to launch her campaign. Solid email. And I simply highlighted here for you all of the times that Hillary uses the words I, me, or my, versus all of the times she uses the words are, we, us, or you. You can see it's very dominant towards I, me, and my. And so it says, I've spent my entire life doing that. I want to be that champion. I won't take anything for granted. I was raised, I'm going to work my heart out. What this communicates to the donor in a very subtle, kind of almost subconscious way is that I've got this. Like this campaign is on me, I've got it. And it actually others the donor, the prospective donor, in a way that's unproductive to getting them to donate, because the donor can't see how they're necessary for success in this campaign. So let's compare it to Bernie Sanders. This is an excerpt of a rather long email that Bernie launched with. And let's compare it to how Bernie talks about fundraising. Let's be clear, our government belongs to all of us. Our movement needs people like you. Support our campaign for president, not my campaign. We will be heavily outspent. Our country, our people, we owe it to our children. We are at a moment of truth. We need to face up to the reality. You can see the our, we, us, or you framing really centers the donor and the need for the donor to be part of this movement in order for us to be successful. And so using that we mindset is a really subtle language shift that's going to lead to much better results over time.
Absolutely. Another thing that you want to be mindful of is not overloading your emails with too many asks. So this is an example from the ACLU when they first started working with us. And this is one of the emails they sent out. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different asks in this one email, which is just overloading it. You want to make sure that you're keeping your reader focused on a singular action, and that action in this case is to fundraise. If you end up giving them way too many actions to take, they might end up not taking any at all. So make sure that you're focused on a singular ask. And then one last thing we wanted to talk about is meeting the moment. Your ability to meet moments will really be the biggest determining factor for your level of fundraising success. It's true that email programs really are a long slog between high moments, so a campaign, an election, where something really big is happening and you're raking in a lot of money, kind of followed by what we tend to see is a fundraising decline after those big moments. And one way that you can kind of create moments for yourself is following developments around your organization, your advocacy area, your candidate's platform, on the news, on Twitter, and manufacturing your own moments using that information that you find. Another way that we kind of manufacture moments, and I'm sure many of you have seen this, is like those end of month, those mid-month, those end of quarter emails. Those are also a way of like manufacturing moments for yourself. But I think one of the strongest ways in terms of like really having like heartfelt content is finding when the news hits the same area that your platform is hitting or your organization is focused on, and creating moments around that. And then lastly, if you are working like at an organization, if you have any programming that's coming out, any like big campaigns that you're launching, those are also really great moments that you can fundraise around.
Excellent. We're going to transition over to Kelsey telling everybody now about ads, which includes our acquisition and direct donating. Go ahead, Kelsey.
Thank you. Yeah, so why ads? Well, we know that the media landscape is ever evolving, especially on digital. So we're really competing for everybody's attention. And our supporters don't live in silos. They don't just exist, in our email program, in our text program. So it's really important that we incorporate digital ads and have these multiple touch points to meet everybody where they are online. One of the also great benefits about digital ads is we have a lot of control with respect to our target audiences, how we're tailoring our message to them, and how much money we're putting behind reaching those supporters. So we're going to be talking about 2 forms of direct response campaigns, starting out with acquisition. So the main goal of acquisition is list growth and building out your supporters. So when ads friends are talking about acquisition, we're really talking about collecting email addresses. There are other pieces of data points that we can collect on via acquisition, like submitting surveys, collecting phone numbers, but the higher bar the ask is, so asking somebody to take a survey for you, the more you would expect to spend on acquiring that person into your program. So why do we recommend paid acquisition? Well, we're building grassroots support and advocacy power, fundraising power for all of our clients' lists. We want them to be as robust as possible. So that's why we want to make sure we're continuously investing in building those lists. We also, see typical unsubscribes, normal list attrition, bounces, people get sent to spam box. So it's also important that you are both growing, but also maintaining your healthy lists and making sure you're making those investments. So when we are planning for acquisition, there are a bunch of questions that we want to think through, starting out with, your budget. Is there a certain limit that the client that you're working with has to stay within? And maybe you can present them with a couple of tiered options so they understand how much they can grow their list over time. And alongside that, what are the client's list growth goals? In other words, how aggressive do you really want to be with growing your list? which vendors have been performing well. We'll get into a little bit about, what the long-term reporting looks like for acquisition programs in just a moment. But it's really important that when you're making these initial investments, say you've never worked with acquisition sources before, this is your first time, you want to kind of test and invest and invest at small scale. That way you can see what those initial immediate results are, and then invest further in the sources that are working or test out different ones if those are not. How is your deliverability? That's another, Kenneth, do you mind going back one quick sec? Thanks. How is deliverability? It's really, really important that when you are making these acquisition investments, that you're coordinating with the folks on the email side to understand how much your list can actually handle and scale. And then lastly, how big is the client's list? This might impact your media planning, because if you've already worked with several, list rental vendors, or you've already invested a lot in Facebook acquisition, you might want to look towards new types of acquisition sources. So how big is that list might impact how you're media planning as well. So why is long-term reporting so important? Well, we know that the goal for acquisition investments is that long-term payback. So it's not that immediate return necessarily. And we want to make sure that all of the sources you are investing in are paying off. We typically see that list acquisition investments pay back somewhere in the range of 9 to 12 months. There are several factors that can impact how those sources are paying back, such as time of year. I mean, right now we're in an off cycle. Fundraising is certainly down across the board, but as we head on into the on year, there's more to talk about. There's more things going on in the news. The energy will be higher and sources will pay back at a quicker pace. We talked earlier a little bit about email cadence as well, and how often or infrequently you're emailing your existing supporter base will also impact how these results come in. I'm going to kick it over to Kenneth now to talk through what kind of our long-term reporting looks like for all of our direct response campaigns. And it'll give you a bit more insight into performance by vendors as well.
Thank you. So when it comes to reporting, the essential things you need to know are, how much did I spend? Who are the people I brought onto the list due to that spend? And how much have those people given me so far in terms of fundraising? So here we see an example of, this is a middle seat table for a client in a report that shows the spending, the raise, and the profit, aka ROI, broken out by month. In this example, from a kind of high profile statewide race, you can see how middle seat monitors each and every campaign we run, in this case on Facebook. And so this is just a small screenshot of a larger report, right? You can see what the goal of the ad was on each row. It's either DD for direct donate or acquisition ACQ. You can see how much we spent on that ad campaign. You can see how many new to list additions came onto our list due to that ad campaign. You can see how much those people have donated, aka how much have we raised. And then you can see our ROI, which is the amount we raised off of that investment divided by the amount we spent. Higher ROI is obviously better.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to pivot now over to the other form of direct response ads today, which is direct donate and fundraising. So two main reasons why we run direct donate ads is to make a profit and also to continue growing our supporter list and bring in those really high intent donors. So the next slide, we're going to look at kind of an overview of what where we run direct donate campaigns and what creative exists on those platforms, as well as what the targeting options are. When we're talking about direct donate ads, we're largely seeing the success and scale on Facebook. This platform has really the ability to test out a bunch of different types of creative and ad copy. And they also have really great targeting options available, primarily targeting your custom list. So you can continue reaching your existing supporter list in a different way outside of email, outside of text. Facebook also has the ability to create lookalikes off of your existing supporter base with the different pieces of information they collect on their users, which also provides us with a lot of really great scale. You'd also be surprised at what targeting flip-flops on Facebook could do for your fundraising goals. So there's certainly a lot of opportunity to test different messages, different audiences. With the other platforms like Google Search, there's not as much scale there because you're targeting specific keywords, but you definitely see really high returns on that platform because it's people who are specifically looking for your candidate, your organization. All right, let's talk about what the success benchmarks look like for direct donate campaigns. 120% return on investment. So when you spend $1,000, you're getting back $1,200. That's really where we have seen the sweet spot for our fundraising campaigns, where you're really able to maximize your profit while also maintaining, bringing in those new to list supporters. We're usually aiming for around 20 to 30% new to list donors on all campaigns that we run for fundraising. But in some situations, you might want to work with your client to understand, if you are bringing in 50% of new to list donors on a given message or platform, it might be okay to lower that initial return on ad spend investment because you know that those are really high intent donors who will contribute to your program through other means as you continue to target them in your email program or future ads. How often are we running direct donate campaigns? This is one of my favorite questions because we would be running ads indefinitely if they were profitable. Again, you want to maintain that steady stream of communications with your supporters. And if you were to only run content around like deadlines or around viral moments, while those are opportunities for immense scale, and you should capitalize on them, you'll see a really big drop off in your fundraising because there isn't just that constant communication. Those moments are just moments and they do have a shelf life. So it's important that you're continuing to reach both new and existing supporters consistently. And something else I wanted to note here is that, when you're running ads outside of these moments, that's your opportunity to really test what messaging works, test different types of creative variations. That way, when you do have these moments, you know what creative concepts can work for you to lean in on and really take advantage of those times. When it comes to pitching and planning for direct donate campaigns, it's a bit different than how we think about it for acquisition, where in acquisition, we're putting together an initial budget, we're testing and investing a bunch of different sources at small scale. With direct donate campaigns, we'll typically pitch a message lane or a concept that we want to test out, maybe something that we've seen working really well on our email program, maybe something timely going on in the news. And start out with around $1,000 initial budget investment across a handful of audiences, a handful of creatives. And from there, we'll report back the success or the failure around that message lane. If we're doing really well, we'll want to ask the candidate, the campaign, to invest more and continue to scale up those ads, and then have the opportunity to invest in other new concepts and continue testing from there. But if they're not, we'll want to pause, reevaluate, see what worked, see what didn't, and test out some new creatives. One of the things I did want to note here when you are pitching, it's not just about that immediate return, right? We talk a lot about new to list donors. So it's also important to emphasize what that looks like to your client if you're looking to get more money to invest. So quickly to talk through some ad copy best practices. I know we talked a lot about very similar things on the email side. The theory of change is still something that really applies here. And of course, you're going to have a different voice for all of your clients, but the content and like kind of the structure of the ad copy is all going to be the same. So you're going to want to start with the hook, explain what the problem is. Why should people be reading your ad? Why are they going to be interested in what you have to say? You'll want to present them with the solution, what needs to be done to kind of fix the problem you just presented them with. Really get their buy-in. And the more specific you can be about the problem at hand, the more credibility you'll lend to that user. You want the reader to understand how they can be of support. So kind of going back to that we mentality instead of I. And then you want to provide a sense of urgency. You know, why should somebody donate to you right now? It's a very flooded market, and you want to make sure they understand why the need is here right now. And then lastly, the call to action. You want to make sure that your call to action is very clear. So for example, if you're running a video, you don't want to say, watch this video, then make your donation. You just want to get straight to the primary goal, which is fundraising. So go straight into the ask. So I have a couple examples of some really successful ads that we ran over the last election cycle at Middle Seat that I just wanted to share, just to show a couple examples of top performing ads creative from the last cycle and the last couple months. I think the comparison that you'll see between the two of these, they kind of both list out like bullet points of why making a donation right now is really important. We've seen that kind of listicle type ad, even on the left side, this like really text heavy graphic that kind of looks like a note style app, like something that's very authentic to you and your everyday is something that works really well. And then conversely with the John Fetterman ad, just like using a raw image, something that's just undesigned, we've also see work really well. So as authentic as you can be with your ad creative and copy is really something that we've seen very successful. And on the next slide, we have just a couple more ads. The previous slide showed a little bit more shorter text on the ad copy, and these are a little bit longer. You definitely want to test out that long form versus short form content, especially if the name recognition around your brand, your candidate, your client isn't very strong. You'll want to incorporate perhaps a little more information to get that buy-in from the supporter that you're seeking the donation from. A couple other things here. We don't afraid to be silly with some ad concepts. This one in the middle is something we've been running for Katie Porter for Senate, where we ask folks to chip in $5 and they'll get sent over some of Katie's meal planned recipes that she makes as a single mom for her family. So no idea is really a bad idea. You don't ever know, what could stick. So feel free to like think outside the box and be creative there. We like to incorporate the usage of emojis in our ads. We also see that has worked really well. This graphic out on the left side also highlights a couple key numbers. How many people you want to donate. What is the average contribution right now? Those are really good hooks that we've seen work really well as well. And that wraps it up for our presentation today.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelsey, Becca, and Kenneth. We had some technical issues earlier, so we are kind of mixing this last part together of the last two slides that we had to finish up here before the webinar cut out. So this is all kind of put together in the final video that people are watching. So hopefully they don't notice the difference. But for those who are just watching this new, thanks to Middle Seat for this awesome webinar. We had some questions that came in from the group that were, I believe, all answered. I don't think we had any that were not answered. So we will follow up with an email to the registrants and to everyone who registered. Also, we will have a blog post up and running with some of the highlights from this, along with links to Middle Seat, which you could see, of course, right there, middleseat.com. You could also reach us at ngpvan.com. And thank you to Middle Seat for doing this webinar with us. We really appreciate it. It was great content, and we hope everyone got a lot from it. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, thanks.
Thank you.